Ask yourself the damn question. Is winning the only thing to you?
Sports today are not just played on the field. They're played every day, online, all over the world, by sports fans just like you.
Don't you dare dream. That won't get you anywhere. If you don't think you're a winner, you don't belong here.
Fantasy Sports puts you in control of your own team. The Nick Bonsanto Show is proud to present the Star Fantasy League Show. Find out who to sit, who to start, how to play, and have your daily fantasy sports questions answered with your host, Jonathan Sprung, co-hosted by SFL CEO Zach Stanley and SFL COO Seth Young. The Star Fantasy League Show, on the air.
Make this game your finest hour.
Now.
Hello and welcome to the Star Fantasy League Show here on Sports Byline Radio. I am your host, Jonathan Sprung, not joined by Zach Stanley or Seth Young today. They are in Canada on business. So joining me are two local Rochesterian talents and fantasy football aficionados. Local, can you believe that? First up, we got Matthew Footer himself. What up, Foot?
Hey, it's great being back, hanging with you, doing this again. You know, we were on this summer doing that podcast thing together, so it's great to be back talking sports again with you, man.
I know, man. You were an original on the Daily Fantasy Source podcast back when we were doing that, and had a lot of fun. And that's great to have you back on the. We're doing live radio now. Can you believe that?
I can't believe it.
We started with one small microphone that we had to all huddle around, and now we have our own headsets. This is getting too big for me. You know what else is getting too big? Rory, you're gonna be bigger than life on the show. We're talking to Rory Camardello. What's up, Rory?
Woo! Thanks for having me.
Oh man, you got the Ric Flair going on.
You know, I watched that clip probably 10 times today. It was hysterical.
You know what the funny thing is? Zach and Seth both hate professional wrestling. I know they're listening to this show. I don't understand their hatred for it. Footer and I are big fans of wrestling. Mm-hmm. It plays into sports. We're talking about Ric Flair. He's a Carolina native, yet he was rooting for and giving a pep talk to a team that they'll play next week. Does that make any sense to you, Foot?
It does not. Steve Smith came out today and said that San Francisco Bridge has been burned in reference to what Ric Flair had said. So Ric Flair pulled the old heel move. If you know wrestling.
We're going to break down all of these divisional wild card weekend games and more, and their fantasy impact. You're listening to the Star Fantasy League Show on the Sports Byline USA Network.
Nick Bonsanto is proud to present the Star Fantasy League Show. Feel free to tweet the show at SFL Show.
Welcome back to the Star Fantasy League Show. We are talking wild card weekend for fantasy NFL. On StarFantasyLeagues.com, we gave away $6,000 in guaranteed prize pools, including a $500 free roll, all for the four games we're going to talk about. Let's get it started with the craziest, most insanely high-scoring, out-of-nowhere game I've seen in a long time, especially with comebacks involved. Indianapolis coming back from 28 points down to defeat Kansas City in the second half. Guys, what the heck happened in that game? Did anybody expect this game to be this high-scoring?
I definitely didn't expect it to be that high scoring. I thought it was going to be a close game based on what we had seen a few previous weeks in Kansas City, the butt whipping that basically Indy put on Kansas City. So I didn't expect a high scoring affair, but I definitely expected a close game.
You know, and I agree completely with Matt, especially the way that Indianapolis has been playing this year all over the board. Definitely did not expect Andy Luck to come in and lead the charge like he did. Extremely impressive, and I'm not going to lie, I was definitely not expecting it.
Yeah, you know what the funny thing is? We're going to talk about standout surprises and setbacks. That's going to be the theme of today for each one of these games. I have Andrew Luck listed as both a standout and a setback because he basically single-handedly pulled him and Trent Richardson, put that team behind by combining for 4 total turnovers. So if you put the ball on the deck like that, you're throwing interceptions, you're putting the ball and fumbling the ball all over, you're going to get behind like this. It's just, especially with the offense. That was pretty potent on Sunday with Alex Smith, Seth's favorite person in the world. He hates him with a passion, but he was the guy.
Throwing for 4 touchdowns isn't bad, so sorry, Seth.
Yeah, really.
Missed that one.
Yeah, I mean, he went 30 for 46, 4 touchdowns, 378 yards. There's no argument he could put out there whatsoever that says that.
And the best part is he had a career high in rushing yards. The man, he's a machine. Everyone knocks him for not being able to throw the ball downfield, but when you've got these dynamic pieces around you, I know Jamal Charles got injured right off the bat.
And he did it without Jamal, which
That's
is
exactly
even more
true.
impressive.
But this just speaks volumes for Andy Reid's system. If Jamal Charles goes out like that and Niall Davis comes in and they don't really miss a beat, he's doing the things where he gets the dump off to the running backs. They go for 15, 20 yards. That's exactly how Alex Smith needs to just manage his offense.
I totally agree. You took the words out of my mouth saying that.
I love it. I love taking the words out of people's mouths. It's just entertaining.
You can't take the words out of Andy Reid's mouth, though, because
you can't take anything out of Andy. He might bite you. Don't do that.
Exactly. Clock management haunts him again.
Oh man, yeah. Can we? That's not part of fantasy, but like you have to assume that he would like play Madden football or something. Like he really looks like he's never managed a football game in his life, and this is not a thing he's done once or twice. He's done it every season. That's his knock, that he cannot manage a game when it comes down to it, and he proved it again. It's not something you can get by on coaching, and he's still doing it. What else surprised you from this game, guys?
I mean, the guy that you guys talked about last week was T.Y. Hilton. I mean, just went off. 13 receptions, 224 yards, 2 touchdowns. Granted, one was a huge, I think, 74-yard bomb somewhere around there, but still, he just absolutely took the game on his shoulders. You know, the big criticism was, by midseason, what are they going to do without Reggie Wayne after going down with that horrific injury? T.Y. Hilton just stepped up and helped his team make it to the playoffs, roll in the playoffs, and, roll past the Chiefs in the first round.
And going back to your point before about hitting his receivers, Dwayne Bowe, 8 receptions, 150 yards. With a touchdown, that can't go overlooked as well, even in a losing effort. Yeah,
I have to give props. Seth, for some reason, didn't mention T.Y. Hilton as one of his value picks on Thursday, but yet he said he was the weekend winner, even though his salary was around $10,000, which means he is a value, and he's also the week. He actually was the weekend winner. I had Dwayne Bowe as my big value, so if you pick T.Y. Hilton and Dwayne Bowe, your team was looking pretty this weekend.
Yeah, definitely.
That's pretty much what we're looking at. But, I mean, I know he only had 1 rush and 1 fumble and no yards, but we have to talk about Trent Richardson. Is he done? Is he an NFL running back after this?
I didn't know he was even active until he came out and made that 1 rush, to be honest.
And then fumbled the ball. You're like, oh, I remember him.
Yeah.
It's the one thing I almost think he's a plague wherever he goes. I can't see his career lasting more than another year, tops.
Is Mike Lombardi looking like the best GM in football for trading him for a first-round pick? Like, you make a mistake on a first-round pick like that, a running back, a marquee guy, and then you just get out from under him, and you have another first-round pick. Look at that.
Yeah, we were laughing, when that trade went down. Like, what were these guys thinking? And then they go and pull that, and it's just like...
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Everybody in the sports nation did, but again, the media only reports on so much, and I think they knew something that we didn't. That's for sure.
Yeah, I feel like they pulled the wool over somebody's eyes, and Lombardi's he's smiling pretty right now. Although they fired their coach in Cleveland, that made absolutely no sense to me. I didn't understand it yet. I don't think he deserved that. That team's clearly in a rebuilding. They were going through a bunch of quarterbacks. I mean, that's like Buffalo firing their coach. They had basically a quarterback carousel. Their guy that they wanted wasn't healthy. Would you fire the coach?
Yeah, no, I mean, Cleveland went through 3 quarterbacks this year. Buffalo went through 3 quarterbacks this year. It's pretty much the exact same situation.
And they have more talent in Buffalo. On the offensive side of the ball, they have much more talent.
I'd say the defensive side, too. That defensive line was a crazy sacks this year. So they had 4 guys who had 8 or more sacks. So
that is very true. Another guy I want to give a quick shout-out to is Donald Brown. The guy on StarFantasyLeagues.com was, as I think we all pretty much agreed on him as a value play, just because he was around 7,200 or something like that. But, I mean, the guy's a starting running back now that Trent Richardson's in the abyss. I'm not even sure he exists, especially going into New England next week. We have plenty of time to talk about this, but they have the worst rush defense since Wilfork and Mayo are gone. Mm-hmm. I feel like if he doesn't go for 150 yards combined next week, there is it just makes no sense because New England is that bad.
I would say on paper he definitely looks like the safe pick to rack up some yards.
I would say he might be both a value and a winner next week. We'll get into it on Thursday on the show, but yeah, I'm pretty high on him. And another guy we got to talk about is Niall Davis.
Yeah, I'd like to give him a shout out. I mean, 25 touches. He had 18 rushes for 67 yards, touchdown. 7 receptions, 33 yards, touchdown. I mean, for a guy, especially if you're playing in Star Fantasy Leagues, you picked him. That's a guy you're riding to the bank, man.
Yeah, I'm not. I went out on a limb and said one backup was going to do well this week, and I went with James Starks because of Eddie Lacy's lingering nagging issues.
Which I understood. Yeah.
But if I had gone with Niall Davis as my maybe backup because of the high-scoring affair, I would have been sitting pretty. But I don't think anybody had him.
No, nobody did, and I had Starks at the beginning of the year, too, in a 14 team league, and he's absolutely killed me this year too.
Yeah. So in season-long formats, you get to play in what, one game?
Pretty much 1 week, and I, of course, started them every week. That's just how I roll.
That hurts. All right, let's move on from the game we're going to talk literally the most about to a game that surprised us in how low-scoring it was. New Orleans on a last-second field goal beat Philly 26-24. What more to say about this game other than everyone seemed wrong about this game. They all thought it was going to be this crazy shootout, and New Orleans, they had to keep up with Philly, overlooking the fact that New Orleans had a great defense all year.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, my standout guy was Mark Ingram. He goes for 18 for 97 and a touchdown. Who would have expected that out of all this so-called offensive game that it was going to be? And he's the top.
Well, everyone talked about Pierre Thomas, and guess what? He sat 20 minutes before the game started, and everyone on Star Fantasy League was kind of rushing to replace him. That's why you kind of have to. That's the biggest thing about fantasy. You have to pay attention to the very, very last second, or else you could be in trouble because you could have had Pierre Thomas and gone, "Oh, I'm fine. He'll do well today." Oops, Mark Ingram showed up. What else surprised you or disappointed you?
I think you hit it right on the head. The defense, especially the Saints defense, you got to give them, a lot of credit. 26 points that they were able to put up and win with that is pretty impressive.
Yeah, if you had said that before the game that they're going to put up 26 points, most people would assume they lost, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You expect Drew Brees to go absolutely off, and I mean he played well. 20 of 30 for 250 with a touchdown.
That Saints defense hasn't been horrible this year now that they have Rob Ryan there. Actually, they've only allowed 194.1 passing yards a game, which was average. Foles threw for 195, so they were right on target right there.
I was going to say, Foles is one of those guys we're not even going to mention because he didn't surprise, he didn't disappoint. He had an okay game. He just they kind of harassed him all day. They forced him to check down to LaShawn McCoy. LaShawn ran at he had 25 total touches, is about what he gets normally. So. Yeah.
And they really did. They had Foles in check the whole game, especially with mixing up different coverages and putting spies on him at different downs. And I thought he did a great job mixing it up. And the entire time I was watching the game, I was thinking, oh, Jerry Jones, how mad are you right now?
Yeah, really.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not a good thing. Jerry Jones, we're talking about playoffs now. There's no need to bring Jerry Jones up.
I know, exactly.
He's not a guy that gets mixed into playoff conversation unless it's exactly what you just said. He's not involved in this conversation. But let's talk a little bit about the rest of this game, as well as the other two wildcard games from Sunday after the break, guys. What do you think about that?
I'm down for that.
Yeah, I think I'm down for that, too. You guys are listening to the Star Fantasy League show on the Sports Byline USA Network.
You're listening to the Star Fantasy League show on the Nick Monsanto Show here on the Sports Byline USA Network. Contact the StarFantasyLeagues.com guys via Twitter at SFL Show.
We're back on the Star Fantasy League show, and before the break, we were talking about the New Orleans-Philly surprise low-scoring game. We didn't actually get to the disappointments. Rory, I think you had a little bit to say about there were many, but the disappointments on Sunday for the New Orleans.
Well, I think two that really stuck out in my mind, and actually looking over at what Seth Young picked last week, Colston and Stills. Oof.
Yeah, I don't. I think did he list those both as his value picks of the day on StarFantasyLeagues.com?
He did, and I want to put my name on that. 3 receptions for Stills for 35 yards. Colston 2 for 16.
I'll be honest. I'm pretty sure Zach was also on the Marcus Colston bandwagon. Earlier in the year, he was all the way off the bandwagon. Then randomly one week he came back. He's like, I love Colston. I'm on the bandwagon. But yeah, I don't.
Again, up and down, and just two disappointments. I mean, again, like you mentioned earlier, luckily they pulled it off, but. Seth, I mean, come on, you run a fantasy football website.
Well, we did mention last week that he's all season just go against his picks. He's really been off. That's kind of the thing. Footer, you were on the podcast with us all year, and
some of the stuff that he said,
it sounded genius, but it ended up not so genius.
I can't. It just blows my mind.
Exactly.
The stuff that he used to put out there.
You can't even get the words out. He's just like, oh, Seth, what are you doing, buddy? We know you're listening, buddy. So we're sorry, but you know what you did. Also, I mean, this is a consensus for everybody. If you're going to pick a tight end this week and you had the money to do it, I mean, Jimmy Graham was $15,000, which is a big point. It's 15% of your team's salary at a $100,000 cap. But Jimmy Graham, 3 for 44, he had 4 total targets. How do you get by only giving that guy the ball 4 times?
I don't understand it. 32nd ranked pass defense in the Eagles, 3 for 44. I mean, if you look at a normal tight end and been like, 3 for 44, that's an okay day right there.
Well, against the worst pass rank defense in the league, you can't even say that's a good day.
And the beast himself, it's just terrible. That's poor management by Sean Payton calling those plays. And
if you're getting that guy the ball 4 times, I don't even care when he's double covered. It doesn't matter. Just throw him the ball.
Mm-hmm. And the conditions weren't even that bad there to get the ball to him.
No, and you hit it. And I almost wonder if it's postseason jitters. I mean, what else would explain that type of performance from the Saints?
Did you notice them running anything where he was like off his routes, or they were like blocking him a bunch? Like I didn't notice anything out of whack for that offense.
No, me neither.
Maybe it was just Graham. I have no idea. Another game that was out of whack for a completely different reason. San Diego went on the road and looked to dominate Cincinnati, and the Red Rocket himself, Andy Dalton. He's definitely going in that disappointment setback category for us, right? He has to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. You can just see, too, the accuracy isn't there. On that 3rd and 4 late in the third quarter, how he misses that wide-open throw, just been an absolute disappointment.
I just put the entire Bengals team 8-0 at home during the regular season, and they pull a stinker like that and put 10 points on the board. I mean, that's terrible. I mean, San Diego had the 23rd overall ranked defense this year, and they put 10 points up.
Well, the funny thing is, the first time these two played, it was 17-10, and everyone was like, "This game's going to be so high scoring." And I said it on Thursday. I said, "Look at what happened last time. A lot of these games are rematches. If it happened the first time, like we saw with Kansas City and Indy, it was a high-scoring kind of blowout game. Guess what? It got high-scoring again. Mm-hmm. This game with low-scoring last time, they seem to play each other tight. I'm not sure what it is.
It seemed like they just came out kind of flat, and I don't know, maybe you attribute that to coaching, Lewis, we know his pedigree.
Yeah, how many wins does Marvin Lewis have in the playoffs? This is a good trivia question. He has a large New York bagel.
Yeah.
A large bagel. It's 0.
0.
That's bad. I mean, at what point – he was supposed to be fired, 2 seasons ago?
I don't understand how that guy still has a job where a guy like Rob Chudzinski in Cleveland gets canned after 1 year that we already referenced.
That's so bad. I mean, there were positives in this game outside. I did mention that I should take the blame here. I said Andy Dalton had the chance to be the weekend winner. Mm-hmm. I said chance only because I thought he would, pull something off. But guess what? He did not do that. He threw what I said. He'd be the Jekyll and Hyde. He had 2 interceptions and 1 fumble. So if you're going to do that, guess what? You're going to be one of the worst quarterbacks of the day.
When you nailed it, he requires a lot of time in the pocket, and he doesn't always get it from that offensive line. Very slow release, and like I said, you got to put the ball on the numbers, especially in a big game like this.
Well, the worst part is he's not even sneaky athletic. Like a lot of these like Alex Smith is sneaky athletic. If he needs to get out of the pocket, he can scramble, he can make room for himself, but Andy Dalton can't. Like, if he gets out to the pocket, he freezes. It looks like he freaks out there. He's just not comfortable. If he runs, you saw he fell on the ball and it popped out. Like,
that was atrocious.
That was one of the most mind-boggling plays I've seen in a while. Like, just hold on to the ball, Andy. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I can't really shoulder all the blame on him. Yeah, RG3 had a play like that a couple of years ago, too, when he dove forward against Detroit, I think it was.
It was against Detroit, and it was a big referee hoopla.
Right. But, I mean, Gio Bernard has a nice game stats-wise, but he catches that ball 2 yards from the end zone and fumbles. I mean, Dalton put him in position to score there, which that was the momentum swing right there. That just turned the game 180 degrees. So,
thank you for not saying 360. I love when people say it turned at 360. You do know that's exactly where it was before. Oh, okay, sorry. We're sorry, guys.
Seth Young probably would have said that.
And he would have been wrong. Ooh, Seth, we're sorry. We're sorry, man. It happens. It happens.
You're absolutely right, though. It's all about turnovers. And in playoffs, you can't turn the ball over.
Yeah,
Cincinnati did it 4 times. Yeah. San Diego 0. And going back to what you said, John, about sneaky athleticism as a quarterback, look at what Phillip Rivers did. What do you feel about him?
He managed the game. He's listed as one of my surprises only because he threw it 16 times. Is that what you expect from Phillip Rivers? No, you expect him to throw 30, 35 times. 12 of 16, 128 and a touchdown. Mm-hmm. That's what they needed. None of us picked him as a fantasy standout. We all knew he was probably going to put up moderate stats, but if you're looking at it from a game management standpoint, he did exactly what he needed to do. He got the ball to the guys that nobody expected him to get to. Ladarius Green got a touchdown in the game, the only one passing. And then they just ran the ball. San Diego had 40 attempts on the ground for 196 rushing yards. That's the absolute win of the day for them.
Which is absolutely wild, too, because think about it. It's a lot of, get up to the line, check off, kill plays.
Yeah, exactly.
And do you think that Phillip Rivers would have been doing that 3 years ago?
No, he would have been screaming.
Oh, he would have been screaming.
He's one of those crazy guys, and if he's taking it in stride and doing this, maybe he has the pedigree to be a champion. Who knows? This team they're weird. This is one of those 6 seeds that you shouldn't be in the playoffs based on what happened on the last weekend of the year. maybe they have it, and maybe they have it moving forward. I don't know. I'm interested to see what they do against. It's got to be one of the best teams in the NFL right now in Denver next week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, they have to use the talent around them. If you would have told me that Ronnie Brown was going to be the leading rusher on that team after Ryan Matthews posting 114 yards for the last 4 weeks of the season, average-wise, 7th overall rusher in the NFL for this entire season, and you say Ronnie Brown goes for 8 for 77 at a touchdown and has a couple catches, I would have said, you're crazy. You're Seth Young. You're picking us.
Exactly. If somebody picked
how many of those can I get?
If somebody picked them on Thursday, I would have laughed at them. Ronnie Brown would have been a terrible pick. But it just goes to show you in Daily Fantasy Sports on StarFantasyLeagues.com, some of these things can just happen. If you guys have any of these crazy guys that you think of that just pop into your head that you're like, nobody will believe in him, but it'll happen, tweet us at SFL Show. Let us know these crazy guys you're looking for next week, and we'll discuss them on the air on Thursday. Let's move on. We got a couple more minutes to talk about the last game of the weekend, the Tundra Ice Bowl that ended up being 10 degrees warmer than they said. Wasn't that big a deal. San Francisco last second defeated Green Bay on a kick by the old man. They got some old men on that team, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, they had David Akers a few years ago, and they just keep recycling old kickers for that team. But, it's been effective. It's getting the job done. Phil Dawson made what he needed to do. Almost got blocked, but I think they called a penalty on the play.
He was offside.
That was incredible. They showed it after. It went in between his two outstretched arms. How did he get more luckier than that?
Yeah.
Ugh, that's just that. If it was Ryan Suckup, he would have hit both arms, gone down.
Yeah.
No penalty would have been called.
But I mean, Colin Kaepernick probably, I would say, arguably has had his 3 best games against the Green Bay Packers last season in the playoffs. Earlier this year, where he threw for over 400 yards, and yesterday he goes for over 300 total yards. I mean, he was just a beast again today, a man beast.
Yeah, He gets it done. I mean, this guy, we talk about Alex Smith getting it done. This guy gets it done in a completely different way. You can't compare the two. One is just an absolute game changer. You have to mold your defense around him. And Alex Smith is just Alex Smith. You don't really game plan for him. You just hope that he doesn't beat you. And guess what? I mean, Kaepernick, he beat you today. That's what he did. He destroyed Green Bay. He ran wild. He had an efficient passing day. That's all you can ask for a guy that, during the first 6 weeks of the year was averaging 147 yards passing a game.
Yeah.
But, 227 through the air, that's all you need, especially when the wind and the cold. That's pretty good.
Absolutely right, going into that stadium. And he really does have 3 weapons that he can beat you with. His arm, his legs, and I got to be honest, his head, too. Him coming up to the line and a few of his pre-snap reads were absolutely on point.
Yeah, he's
not afraid to run the ball himself when he needs to pick up a few hard-fought yards.
He's not afraid to tackle when he turns the ball over, too.
Oh, unbelievable.
That hit, man.
That's crazy.
He was not happy with
Tremont Williams, I think, was the one who came up and popped him, and he got up, got right in his face, and said, not many quarterbacks would be doing that.
No, absolutely not. I'm a diehard Buffalo Bills fan, and one thing that Kaepernick did at the end of that game that E.J. Manuel refuses to do is step out of bounds. Yeah. Why try to get that last yard and a half? Come on, use your head. You're a quarterback. Protect yourself.
I had the pleasure of watching Colin Kaepernick at UNR when he was playing UNLV. It just looked, when I saw him in college, it looked like a man playing against JV kids. He looked over the defense. It looked like he always knew what was happening before it happened. And I think he ran for 200 yards in that game. And you saw that and you're like, this guy's an NFL star. He has to be. When San Francisco drafted him, you knew they had a plan to put him in. And one Super Bowl berth and maybe another one coming up a year later, that you clearly have your franchise guy. And he's a fantasy guy. This week I was a little against picking anyone in this game, but, the cold weather, you kind of want to stay away from the windy situations. There are obviously a couple more games on the board we liked, but if there are conditions, that's one of the things in fantasy. You want to stay away from just crazy conditions because anything goes. You really don't know what's going to happen, and that's pretty much what happens in fantasy. You really don't know, but you gotta do your research. You gotta pay attention. That's how you win when it comes to fantasy sports. And guess what? We're going to talk more about fantasy sports, especially NBA, when we come back from the break. You're listening to Star Fantasy League Show on the Sports Byline USA Network.
The Star Fantasy League Show is now part of the Nick Monsanto Show. Information is key to being a successful fantasy team owner, and the guys have all the updated info you need right now.
We are here on the Star Fantasy League Show. We're here with Rory Camardello and Matthew Foot himself. Guys, I wanted to give you a little bit of time in this segment to tell us all about your fantasy backgrounds, your allegiances in sports, because we got to do that on the first show of the year, and since Seth and Zach decided that business is more important than doing this amazing opportunity of a radio show, that you guys would get to talk to our listeners all around the world on the American Forces Network. We love our listeners. Give them a little taste of what makes you tick as a sports fan, Foot.
Sure. I mean, we are based here in Rochester, New York, so I keep my allegiances pretty close to the heart with the Buffalo sports teams. I am a Bills fan. I am a Sabres fan. Those are my two favorite sports. I do root for the New York Yankees, so you can hate me for that if you'd like.
Yes, I will.
Which you do on a daily basis, basically. And then, come with the NBA, I grew up watching the Michael Jordan Chicago Bulls and kind of stuck with them when they were terrible, and now they're terrible again. So that's kind of where my allegiances lie at this point. Speaking of fantasy, played my first year of fantasy football in 2000, so I've been playing fantasy sports for 14 years. I play a lot of fantasy hockey. I've probably been playing that for about 6 years. Do a little basketball, baseball. Not so much. I rather just enjoy the game, to be honest with you. So that's kind of my background expertise. Just started playing daily this year.
Were you playing on StarFantasyLeagues.com?
All the time. I saw the site,
yeah.
and I was like, done. I'm just going to start playing daily right now.
I mean, yeah, we got a bunch of variety. We have the 4 major sports. We got a bunch of games going on every day. What's better than that? What?
I mean, it cures my addiction, fantasy sports addiction.
Fantasy addiction? That's not a good thing. You don't want that.
Yeah.
You mean fantasy itch is what you were going for.
Yeah, I guess we'll go with that. But, I had definitely an off year in season-long fantasy football, so having the daily games available for me each week definitely filled that void of being
out.
Yeah.
Well, that's the funny thing. That's what people don't really know yet about daily fantasy sports, and especially StarFantasyLeagues.com. If you have a season-long format and you're out, you're at the bottom of your league, and it's 4 weeks into the season, and you're struggling, and you really don't see you coming back from that rut, you can play a different lineup every single day on Star Fantasy Leagues. All you do is you join a game, you set your lineup. At the end of the night after the games are over, if you do well, you win money. If you don't, you lose. But the next day, you start with a brand new lineup. That's the beauty of the game. I love it. Anything else you want to throw in there, Foot?
No, I think that pretty much sums it up. I mean, I like pretty much every opposite team you do, so we got some good banter usually going on there on our podcast. So
yeah, but you're usually correct, and I'm usually correct, so I don't get to banter with you that much.
That's true.
If Seth's here, we get to just scream at him all day.
Because he is a Patriots fan, which is the big thing.
That's disgusting. All right, Rory, bring us out of that rut of talking about the Patriots, please.
Oh, God, no problem there.
Yeah, really.
For those of you, obviously, this is radio. You can't see what Matt is wearing, but he has a phenomenal pair of Buffalo Bills sweatpants on, and they are phenomenal.
What are you talking about? We're wearing full suits here.
Yeah, exactly.
We're suited up.
No, I'm a diehard Buffalo Bills fan and a New York Mets fan, so definitely don't call me a bandwagon fan because that's just not true.
No.
I also like the Sabres when they're in the playoffs or potentially going for the Stanley Cup.
I think it's called the Stanley Cup. Yeah, that thing.
Stanley Cup. I've been playing fantasy football for about 5 years, and I don't lose. I don't lose when I play fantasy football.
Oh, wow. Apparently, when Zach's on the show, he claims he's a, 16-time fantasy champion.
I heard that last week.
I think that number changes all the time. Like, do you know exactly how many times you've won? I don't keep track of that
I don't.
stuff.
He's probably played about 500 leagues.
I said that to him. I said, you probably played about 197. He's like, no, that's not true. That's not true at all.
I want an audit.
Yeah, I would like to see it.
That's absolutely what I want.
But
I don't do the. I've got pretty bad ADD, so I can't do the whole baseball fantasy thing because that requires way too much attention.
Well, that's why we bring it back.
I was just going to say,
we bring it back to daily fantasy sports. If you want to do your research, as much or as little as you want to put into daily research for any of the sports, especially baseball, there's so many teams, so many players, so many pitcher versus batter, and all this crazy sabermetrics you got to do. If you want to do 5 minutes of research for a baseball day, you can do it. You can build a good team. If you know what you're looking for, if you look at the right stats, the right just combination of things you look at could make you the best team in the quickest time. There's also a bunch of different ways you can get good information. Hint, hint, this show is one of those. When the baseball season comes up, we're going to be giving you daily breakdowns of what pitchers to look for, what pitcher versus batter stances to look for, and all that kind of stuff that will help give you that little extra edge when the season comes along. But especially with with football winding down, we're going to start breaking into some other sports. Quickly, I want to get your guys' take, not from a fantasy standpoint, but what you think about these 2 days of football we got coming up and the matchups we have in the divisional round. Anything stand out about these matchups for you guys?
I mean, I just like to see, granted, it's different guys at different times, but, the epic playoff battles we've seen in the past between Indianapolis and New England, I definitely would like to see how Belichick's going to adjust this time. San Diego going into Denver just a few weeks ago, defeating them, now coming back there again. AFC West rivals back to the 60s AFL times. And then jumping out west, New Orleans, Seattle had a pretty epic playoff game a few years ago in Seattle as well. And then San Francisco, Carolina. Carolina is my team to go for the NFC. I really like them. They're an upstart team. They ended the season well last year. They started the season really well this year. So I'm excited to see that matchup as well.
Did you just say Carolina coming out of the West?
Yes, I did.
Wow.
And actually, I hate to say it, I have to disagree with that one too. I think for that team, a younger team, you got a young quarterback. I think the worst thing for them right now is a bye.
That might be very true. I didn't think of it that way. They had momentum. That was a team that was winning. They played hard. I mean, granted, they have played San Francisco this year, but that gives even more reason for Harbaugh to come in there, game plan harder than ever, and beat them.
And you nailed it. And the other big thing, too, is here you got this kid, Kaepernick, going in, who is just starting to hit his full stride again after – you guys remember the beginning of the season, everybody was all over. I didn't know San Francisco had such hard-hitting reporters. They were all over that poor guy.
Yeah,
you let him work up the kinks. Yeah, defenses are going to get creative, come up with different looks. You're seeing a lot of cover two now with him, actually, which is kind of funny to prevent the big play. But
because you don't know what to do with him. He can do everything.
Well, they dialed up a great play list. I think it was the third down run, the huge run. They had contain on him on the outside, and the quarterback went inside. And then, boom, he just goes on the outside. Dom Capers, the defensive coordinator for Green Bay, they pointed it out right on the broadcast, and they actually said, they had the play called out for him, and they just let him go by, and that was a game right there.
Well, that's like Madden 5 years ago when you had the QB spy just for Michael Vick.
Exactly.
But Michael Vick could still see the QB spy and run past it. That's what Colin Kaepernick's doing. They're containing him, and then he goes, "Oh, that's the guy that's containing me. I'm gonna juke him and then run away."
Yeah.
That's pretty much what you just see him, and he's like, "Oh, he's gonna run faster than that guy." It's incredible. He's just an absolute steed. He looks like a horse.
He's a great athlete, and you said it. You said momentum.
That's why I'm excited to see this Carolina defense, see what Kuechly can do against a guy like that, because he's one of the best young linebackers in the league. And
the Panthers have squeaked out a lot of games. They really have. They're really living on a prayer.
Although they did lose to Buffalo. Hey-oh.
Yeah, there you go. Speaking of Bon Jovi.
I was saying, every time I do this show, somebody's got to talk to me, whether it's you guys or Zach. Somebody's got to.
Yeah, it's me. Usually me and Zach doing it. So.
New Year's all over.
Zach could brush up on his Buffalo Bills knowledge a little bit, though.
Ooh, shots fired by Rory. Gotta love it. All right, the funny thing is with these matchups, 3 of the matchups have already happened this season. So, and I'm pretty sure not all the dogs. Carolina beat San Fran this year. Seattle destroyed New Orleans, and obviously Denver lost to San Diego in kind of a strange game. Mm-hmm. But Indy, New England, they played a season, not this season, but last season, and they killed Indy. Absolutely. I think it was 59-30 or 59-27, something like that.
Yeah, at that time, though, I don't think the play calling was most effective for Luck. He was throwing the ball 55, 60 times a year. So I think that's – granted, he had to come from behind this past week, so I don't think it's the best indication. But, if they can get somewhat of a running game going with Allen Brown again, I see definitely different outcome. Maybe not a win, but...
And I think it's been proven with the Patriots, you have to have a balanced attack.
That's very, very true. They'll take away your best weapon. If you have more than one, you're going to be in a good spot.
And what else I'm really interested in this game, too, interaction between quarterback and coach.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you hear about it all the time with Brady and Belichick, and, you got 2 younger guys on the other side of the ball. I'm interested to see how it plays out, and they've got another year under their belt, and we'll see. We'll see how luck comes out.
We'll say it'll be a good weekend of games for sure. These are going to all going to be probably close, entertaining games. A couple of them high scoring, a couple of them not. But we have a few more days this week. We're on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 8 to 9 Eastern, 5 to 6 Pacific. We will be talking about football the rest of the week, I'm sure. But let's get into the last 5 minutes of the show. Let's talk about some NBA. Tonight, obviously, the games have already gone off. Some guys that I wanted to keep an eye on while we're watching this. the Minnesota-Philadelphia game was a game I wanted to take every single player from if possible. That's called stacking. If you guys aren't familiar with daily fantasy sports, stacking is when you basically take most of the players on one team and put them in your lineup. It's basically just going all in for one team. Currently, with 9 minutes left in the game, it's 109-81 Minnesota. This game was 220 points over/under. They're going to absolutely destroy that with 9 minutes left.
And look at what Kevin Love is doing. You know, he's just steady as they come this year.
Yeah, the funny thing is he's actually having, I mean, granted, there are 9 minutes left. I'm not sure if he's going to continue playing. This is live. But he's got 26 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, 1 block. He's a human box scorer. He's just, I mean, and the guy shoots 4 of 7 from 3.
Yeah, I believe he's second in three-point percentage this year.
Yeah, that's
currently.
I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's true.
I mean, Minnesota's got 7 guys. Yeah, I'm counting that right. 7 guys in double-digit points right now.
Yep. That's what I figured would happen with this game. I on one of my teams on StarFantasyLeagues.com and one of the free rolls, I put in literally almost the entire team. I put in Rubio, Pekovic. I think I got Love in there. I mean, the problem is with a lot of these guys, since they are scoring so high and they're getting a lot of fantasy points, you got to really look for value. On the other side of the ball, I did see a little bit of value, but it turns out this is where research comes in handy. A lot of these sites, you got to pay attention to the last possible second. I was really high on Tony Roten at shooting guard for Philadelphia because they're going up against Minnesota. Obviously, the defenses are both just not there. But it turns out Tony Roten was experiencing flu-like symptoms and was sat about 20 minutes before game time. So again, you guys, you need to pay attention to these. We're going to have these fantasy alerts. Since our show goes live 8 to 9, if there's a game that starts at 9:30, 8:30, we're going to give you those last-second injury alerts, those last-second sits or starts. For instance, Nikola Pekovic later is probably going to give it a go for Orlando, but I would definitely stress that you stay away from that situation. I mean, he has a favorable matchup, but if you're basically playing hurt and as I say, you're giving it a go, you don't want to start a guy like that. That's not smart.
Completely agree. And you also have to mention the other barn burner in the NBA right now, Hawks and the Nets. Just went to half.
Hawks, since Al Horford went down, that team's a little hard to judge. That's my only issue with them. I mean, it's another thing. That's another game where a last second sit. Darren Williams was another late scratch, and Allen Anderson ended up starting for that team. So
I saw that. That's just a game I want nothing to do with.
That's exactly. I mean, the thing is, you can look at over-unders, you can look at all these things. It gives you a good scope of where they think the game is going to head. If you see a game that's about 220 points over-under, you really kind of have to go for it. That makes the most sense for you. Basically, that's the way I look at it. I mean, what are your guys' just very basic strategies for NBA? Because we got we only have a 3-game slate tonight, so there's only 2 games to talk about. We got one later. Like I said, Pekovic, I wouldn't start him. I'd go with Glenn Davis at a value if you have a late swap position and he doesn't end up playing. Or if you have the money, DeAndre Jordan, love him. He's been playing great recently. But tell me your basic strategies when you're going to an NBA game for daily.
I mean, I kind of take the same strategy that you do. I kind of learned this from you, just looking at the over/under and going from there. I think it's the best option for you, looking at the value. So
that's a pretty good way to start. And there are a bunch of different ways to do it, and that's what we give you on the Star Fantasy Leagues. And we'll give you more every day. That's what we do. You're listening to the Star Fantasy League show on the Sports Byline USA Network.
Play fantasy sports for cash prizes. Join the top daily and weekly fantasy leagues in the country at StarFantasyLeagues.com. Now, back to the Star Fantasy League show with Jonathan, Zach, and Seth.
You guys, that was an absolutely entertaining edition of the Star Fantasy League show. We are not here with Zach and Seth. We just wrapped our first show with Matthew Fritter and Rory Camadello. How did you guys enjoy your first experience of co-hosting a nationally syndicated radio show?
I would rank that first overall out of all the shows you've done so far.
Wow, out of 1 of 2.
Yeah.
Wow, you are aiming for the fences, but
I'm just saying.
What about you, Rory? How do you feel taking over for Zach?
Man, it was great. I'd have to say it was 1 or 2 of my best sports experiences ever.
Really? Is that a genuine thing?
Yeah, I'd have to say number 2 is when I went 40-0 at RIT flag football and won 4 championships. So those are 2 pretty significant moments.
I'm not going to lie. I'm so glad you threw that in there. You told us about that off air, and I was like, if he gets it on the air, I'm going to be so excited. But, Footer, I believe you're going to join me on tomorrow's show. Is that correct?
Yes, I will be here if you're going to have me back again.
We'll see how the listeners. Guys, if you enjoyed Footer's contribution on the show, tweet us at SFL Show, or you can email support@starfantasyleagues.com. You can go to the website, starfantasyleagues.com. Rory sadly has got to go away for business. Come on, working? Who does that?
I know. Got to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and try to go catch an airplane in this.
In this ridiculous, yeah, we have a deep across the country, across the Midwest and the Northeast. We got some deep freeze going on right now. Hopefully, I got to go to Vegas next week for some conventions. Hopefully, I get out of here. That's what I'm worried about. Luckily, it's later in the week, but
hopefully, it freezes Tom Brady's arm as well.
Oh man,
yeah.
That's just what we need.
That would be amazing. But you guys, we got a big schedule going on Star Fantasy Leagues this week. It's division. I keep getting the wild card divisional mixed up. I don't know why.
Okay.
It's divisional weekend. We got another $6,000 in guaranteed prize pools. Games as low as $0. We have a $500 free roll on StarFantasyLeagues.com. Play daily fantasy sports for free or all the way up to $109. We got a $2,000 double up. So basically, if you want to play daily fantasy sports and you don't know how to start or where to start, we will help you set your lineups on the Star Fantasy League show and on StarFantasyLeagues.com. And you guys, that was a great show. And guess what? If you don't have John Kitner in your lineups, we'll help you set a better lineup next time. Woo! Take care.